an event that we can all look forward to this weekend. We've got VASYL Lomachenko trying to achieve his dream against another guy who is the dream in Devin Haney, looking to prove himself to the masses. According to Devin himself, he's not received the respect that he feels he deserves for beating George Kambosos. He's had, of course, that funny back and forth with Doug Fisher as well from Ring Magazine. He feels he should be on the pound-for-pound list. Lomachenko has said it is his last chance for Undisputed.
Yeah.
Having said that, Loma himself has spoken about the fact that with the conflict in his homeland, he has seen other priorities in his life, sort of in the hierarchy of things that are important to him. Whilst Devin Haney, on the other hand, has more time if things do go wrong. So from the pressure, who do you think's more under pressure to win this fight between the two guys?
I still think it's Loma. In terms of his overall profile internationally and the fact that he's been on pound-for-pound lists for at least the last 5-6 years, and at a time he was #1. He's being very honest. This is probably his last shot to ever become an undisputed champion. Haney still has his life all in front of him. He's still in his mid-20s. He's going to be boxing theoretically for at least another decade. And I will say this, Loma should not be counted out. I'm actually surprised so many people are writing him off. However, and I'm going to write this in my column a little bit later today, which will be turned in by tomorrow for Thursday posting. Loma has to be the aggressive fighter. He cannot lay back and give up the first 4 rounds and have everyone say he's downloading. All he's downloading, if he does that, is downloading his 3rd or 4th loss. I don't want to hear that. I've told that to Tim Bradley. I said, Tim, if you use the term downloading when he's down 3-0, I'm going to take back every great thing I said about you, Tim. I'm his biggest fan, but Tim, I don't want to hear downloading. And then think about UK soccer, or you guys call football. If a team gives up the first 3 goals, no one ever said, well, they're just downloading. No, they're getting their ass beat. I don't get. And in a 12-round fight, maybe you could do that downloading stuff in a 15-round fight. Chris, they haven't had 15-round fights in about 35 years, okay? But Loma has shown that that he's a very good guy at slipping and countering and throwing the straight or lead counter left, ditching the jab and because his arms are very short. So distance and spacing, Chris, I think from a strategic standpoint is so key. Because if he's left all the way outside, he's going to be a dog on the leash. He'll lose every round. But if he can get inside and get into the chest of Haney, and this is where the referee is going to be important, because you know Haney's defense inside is to grapple. That's going to be absolutely key. But this has to start from round 1. It can't start from round 6, or in my view, Chris, it's too late.
I agree with you. And the thing is, with Teofimo Lopez, you know that he carried the sort of firepower which perhaps made Loma a little bit tentative early on. Devin Haney, with all due respect, doesn't carry that same sort of firepower.
No.
So Loma doesn't necessarily have to wait for him to start to slow down either. So I agree with you. And in terms of the referee, we did hear Devin Haney speak about Loma being a dirty fighter, which I found quite ironic. But to me, that seemed like a tactical choice of words because, as you say, Haney is the one renowned for holding. How important do you think the referee will be in this particular fight? Could it decide the outcome?
Very.
And have we got any information on who that ref might be?
Not yet. As we're speaking here on a Tuesday afternoon, Chris, I have not heard anything. I asked Carl Moretti of Top Rank on Sunday, who's the referee, and, you know, Carl's a funny guy. He said, I probably won't be Tony Weeks. I think Tony is not possible. Okay. It will not be Tony Weeks. Oh, I will guarantee you that. But I found that interesting that Devin Haney called him a dirty fighter. I've never thought of VASYL Lomachenko as a modern-day Fritzy Zivic. But this is interesting. Loma has to be the roughhousing guy on the inside. Teddy Atlas always talks about fighters who allow themselves to be clinched. He's never used that excuse. He says most guys comply or they cooperate. And I'm just telling you, VASYL Lomachenko, as soon as he gets into that airspace that he needs to be at, he better get his hands moving and do whatever it takes to not to get tangled up on the inside. A referee that I like, and I think we need to talk about this in the wake of what happened. We need new blood in the sport. We have a terrible habit, and Nevada's been very guilty of this, of having the same officials and judges who have a very dodgy track record over and over again. They are more entrenched than our Supreme Court judges. It's insane. But a judge that I would use, that I like, because he's got great feet, He's very athletic, and he's young, and I don't think he's tainted, and he's there without being there. Harvey Doc. If I was the commissioner of boxing, I'd say, Harvey, your call. Get out there and don't screw this up tonight.
And, you know, going back to that Teddy Atlas comment as well, one of the reasons I felt that it was a tactical decision from Haney to say what he said, Teddy used to speak about George Kambosos in the first fight as complying with the clinch of Haney. And one of the things with Lomachenko, when you do try to tie him up, he rolls his arms a lot. He does have that background in wrestling from his childhood. And he'll use his forehead just to, not to push off, just to ensure that it's just below the chin of the opponent so he can create that space to pull out without being held. And because he's so good at things like that and creating the space, it made me think that Devin Haney is acutely aware that as he tries to tie up, when Loma tries to get busy on the inside, he's going to want Loma to not do that, essentially. And that's why I felt that this was a tactical move from Devin. And in terms of the impact of that, going back to your snack.com article, which is a brilliant column, by the way, guys, for those of you that might not be following it, I always retweet it, check it out, read it, you'll really enjoy it. But going back to that quote again about years ago, you were speaking to a wise old guy from boxing who told you fighters perform for today, judges and officials perform for tomorrow. Devin Haney is a free agent after this fight. And unless he extends with Top Rank, a cynic might say that it suits Arum for Loma to win. However, if Arum was able to entice Haney into agreeing a new deal, then the potential rivalries on the horizon against guys like Shakur, against guys like Teofimo, there could be more financial upside to that. So in that case, one might argue that it would suit Bob for Haney to win. So what are the chances of Haney extending with Top Rank, and what role could politics play in the outcome of the fight if it's a close fight on the cards?
We have to be realistic. These things do matter. They really do. To say otherwise would be incredibly naive and dishonest. But you look at it both ways. Who would Top Rank really want to win? Well, if they had both guys under contract for the same amount of time, long term, they'd want Haney. He's 10 years younger. I mean, that's an obvious question. But if this guy's already saying, hey, we win this fight and we're back out on the open market, all of a sudden you're like, okay, that changes the whole dynamic. I would hope that the judges don't play ball. There's two fighters, just judge the 12 rounds, one at a time, may the best man win. But we know that has not always been the case. The interesting thing about Haney is that he's actually been very well compensated during the duration of his time with Top Rank. Now, did he get a break because the Australian tourist company or that organization overpaid him? Yeah, you can make the argument, but that's part of being a champion. You get the benefit of wearing all the titles and the belts. So I don't know this is interesting. Bill Haney made some interesting comments at the press conference about 6 weeks ago, how he basically said, hey, we win this fight and we're on the open market. You know, I find that to be you're playing with karma at that point, because I think that they are overlooking Loma a little bit. And Loma's always been a very, very loyal soldier alongside his manager, Egis Klimas. They've had a really good working relationship for about a decade now. Do I believe that there is some favoritism, and in a close fight where it could swing either way, could I see a scenario where it shades Loma? I would say out of those two, if that dynamic existed, it would be for the Ukrainian.
And one of the things I find interesting, Paulie Malignaggi was talking about how he feels that Top Rank are the absolute best promotional company at being able to spot when a terrific fighter, a champion, is in the twilight of his career and it's time to pass on the torch. And he feels that Lomachenko will beat Devin Haney, but then after that, he's at a point in his career where he's declined just enough to be ready to be taken by Shakur Stevenson.
Yeah.
And again, for that to happen, you would need Loma to come away with the belts rather than Devin Haney running back to Matchroom. So
right, and Chris, keep this in mind. Devin Haney's on borrowed time at 135. I know the process that he has to go through to make weight. If you went back to the olden days where guys weighed in at 8 o'clock on the morning of the fight, he might be a welterweight. But nowadays, this is the reality. Sometimes, Chris, those weigh-ins that you see from the States that are in front of thousands of people that are televised, those are all ceremonial.
Yeah.
They've actually weighed in sometimes 5, 6, 7 hours before. So when people say it's the day before weigh-in, I say no, now it's the 30-plus hour weigh-in. And Ray Boom Boom Mancini, great friend of mine, who had to box 15-round fights where he had to weigh in at 8 o'clock in the morning of a fight, he said, Steve, that's a joke. You might as well weigh them in on Tuesday. My God, we don't even have weight classes. But the process that Devin Haney goes through in terms of cutting off that weight, really at the 11th hour, And a lot of guys nowadays, Chris, they're not doing that thing where they hover 2-3 pounds above the weight limit for a week. They're basically now doing a hyperhydration and flushing out almost like a dozen pounds in a night. There's a whole protocol. You take a scalding hot bath. Then you have to get like Epsom sea salt. Then you got to drink a certain amount of water, then go back into the bath. And you have to literally wick off the sweat to make sure it doesn't secrete back in. It is actually a science now. And that's what Haney has to do. But with that said, even 30 plus hours, you're not going to get everything back. That's why Loma has to push back and put the pressure on the legs of Loma from the opening bell.
Indeed. And to be honest with you, I know this is sort of digressing slightly, but it's one of the reasons that I actually feel that rehydration clauses should actually be banned, because by the time it takes a certain amount of time in order to replenish your cerebrospinal fluids. And so I don't think it's safe, to be honest with you. But as you're saying, from a tactical perspective, because you're not going to get everything back, Loma really does have to start early. Yeah. Try and apply as much foot pressure as possible, work the body with those short arms, build from there, and really force Devin into a position whereby he's really blowing hard in the latter half of the fight. How do you see the fight going, Steve? What's your pick, if you don't mind me asking?
You know, I think Loma's live. I go back to that Joseph Diaz fight. Now, Joseph Diaz is a good little counter-punching boxer, but I would say at the world-class level, he's slightly below average in terms of power. Even as a featherweight, he really wasn't blowing people out of there. He's clever. He's technically sound. He represented our country on a very good Olympic team, which actually had a better pro run than they did at the Olympics. And I just say to myself, well, wait a minute. What does he do better than Lomachenko? And I'm thinking to myself, if he had his moments late in that fight and had some really big moments where I'm like, I was actually also at the Linares fight where Linares buzzed him right at the end of the 10th, but he fell into the clinches in 11th and 12th. He cooperated. I think Loma is worth the picture in terms of the value, and you're getting about 2.5, 3 to 1. If you said, Steve, gun to head, you got to put some money on this, I would go with the value at the underdog here.